Hello and welcome everyone to tonight's webinar called Leading Your First Shift in Charge, brought to you by the Newly Registered Nurses Network. My name is Kendall Andreasen. I work here at the Royal College of Nursing. I'm one of the professional leads. I'm the professional lead for acute and emergency care and defence nursing. And I also look after the Newly Registered Nurses Network, which I'm super pleased about because when I was a newly registered nurse, I was involved in the formation of the network. So it's really great to see it grow and evolve over the years. And part of that has been really listening to the membership and listening to what the membership needs. And what we've heard is that some of you might be a little nervous or feel a little bit unprepared about leading that first shift in charge. You might even feel a bit of imposter syndrome. So we're putting on this hour's webinar to try and kind of ease some of those negative thoughts and make sure that we set you up for success in that first shift. We've got a really brilliant lineup and I will go through that now, I think. So next slide, please. So you'll enjoy my very specific timings down the left-hand side there. That allows each of our awesome guests to speak for either 12 or 6 minutes respectively. I'm going to do a little introduction now. As you can see, I'm going to talk a little bit about the NMC, and then I'm going to pass on to Dr. Emily McWhirter, who is also a staff member here at the RCN. She's the Associate Director of the Leadership Academy, which is part of the new Nursing Centre of Excellence. And it'll be really great to hear from Emily because she's got a vast experience. She's going to talk to us about what that academy can offer, but also about her experiences leading, which will be really insightful. We're then going to hear from Major Neil Gilbert, who is a general practice nurse in the British Army. He is the senior nursing officer up at Redford Barracks in Scotland, and he's really kindly offered to come in at the very last minute today. You might have been expecting to see the name Ivo Cavallo da Silva there instead of Neil's. Unfortunately, Ivo is poorly tonight. We wish you well, Ivo, and we're really thankful for Neil coming here to speak to us. We know that the Army spends a lot of time developing its leaders, so it'll be really good to get some insight from him. Then we're going to hear from Gabby Nutley and Lucy Hayes, who are both newly registered nurses. So it's going to be really important to hear from their experience because they've got some very recent experience and can give us some really good top tips, which will be amazing. Gabby is a newly registered mental health nurse working in forensic settings, and Lucy is a newly registered adult nurse working in acute elderly care. So it'd be great to hear from them, not just because they have most recent experience, but because they're two of our 3 leaders of the Newly Registered Nurses Network. We know that everything at the RCN is member-led, and they are the members that lead that network alongside their colleague, Joanna Mendez, who is actually going to moderate our Q&A alongside another colleague of ours, Caitlin Willis, who is a RCN staff member who works up in Scotland. So talking of the Q&A, we're leaving plenty of time for that Q&A, and we'd love you to pop your questions in the Q&A box for us so that we can leave plenty of time for them, because we know that although it'd be really great to hear from these awesome speakers, it will also be really useful to answer some of your really specific questions. So we're really keen to do that. So before I hand over to Emily, I'll just go to the next slide and signpost you to the NMC. We know the NMC code has a real focus on leadership, and that is because we know that all nurses are leaders. So that's a really good starting point for you to think about how you're going to tackle those leadership roles and give you some really good food for thought on how to develop as a leader. So you should definitely check out the NMC website alongside some of the resources we're going to share with you tonight. So without further ado, I will hand you over to Emily for her presentation. Thanks, Emily.
Well, hello, everybody, and thanks very much, Kendall. And it's a real privilege, actually, to be able to talk to you, and particularly to talk to you about this subject. So I can see there's quite a lot of you on the call now for a, Wednesday night. That's brilliant. Coming up to Christmas. I hope you've all had a good day. And thank you for listening to us for the next hour. But I hope in my, whatever it is, 12 minutes, I'm going to try and stick to the time. I can give you maybe some top tips or some solidarity, perhaps, about what it feels like. And when When Kendall asked me to speak on this subject, I think I had a little bit of PTSD, because I know when you introduced the subject at the beginning, Kendall, you said some of you may be a little nervous. Well, I was actually terrified. So an understatement, being a little nervous. And I have never, ever forgotten it. And in fact, it was the 5th of December. I won't say how many years ago now, but the date is even stuck in my mind, because I can remember every part of that first shift in charge. And I think it was planned. In my head, it was planned, and I had my in charge day scheduled on the staff rota, and I knew exactly who was going to be on duty that day, and I actually knew who was going to be on duty on the wards around that as well, just in case, because I had really planned it. Anyway, that was in the diary. It was about 3 weeks away, and I turned up on the ward for my afternoon shift on the 5th of December, and the nurse in charge said, "Oh, Paula's not well this afternoon, so you're going to be in charge. I hope that's okay." And I was like, no, my in charge shift is in 3 weeks' time. She said, "Well, it's today." And I remember that horrible pit in my stomach of thinking, oh my goodness, this is just too frightening, and I don't know what to do. So I am really supportive of trying to find ways of making it feel a little bit easier, and actually just making it feel for you that you are not alone in having to experience this. It's something that you will look back on, you will remember, it will be okay, and you will get through it. And we've all had to do that. But when you're in the midst of it, it can feel horrible. So I'm hoping today I can just give you some pointers and some support to say, this is what I would think might have been helpful for me on that day. So if I could just have the next slide, please. And we'll skip through this one quite quickly, because one of the key things for me is always trying to remember why I am there. Why do I do the job that I do? And that's really important, whatever stage in your career that you're doing, because you have some days which are frightening, and some days which, despite how much you plan and how much you think is going to happen or predict what's going to happen, they never go to plan. Curveballs happen, people get sicker than you expected, people change, things just happen, don't they? And so always trying to just remember on those really difficult bad days, what am I doing here? And as a nurse, as a little girl dressed up, I always wanted to be a nurse. I always wanted to be on a ward. I always thought that was the best thing ever. So the next slide, please. I think, can we just move on? Yeah, so some of you might remember this. So I won't say which one of these is when I ended up as a ward manager, which one of those I was. But I think, yet again, you have this is just a reminder of the experience of people who you work alongside. So whatever shift you're doing, whether it's your first, your fifth, your 50th, your 500th, there are always people around who are firstly new, and there are always people there who have been around a long time. And one of my top tips is always to find out who they are. So if I can just have the next slide, please. So some things that might help you in advance. So I always am a great fan of I have a little black book with me, keep it in my handbag. I have it today. But it's a really, really useful resource because it has loads and loads of useful numbers. And I think when you first start your first shift, or when you're early in your career and you're looking at maybe doing more than your first shift, start building your little book of useful numbers. And in that, I keep the IT help desk, the porters, the safeguarding team lead, the PALS team lead, the people on the gates downstairs. So a little book of people that you go, I don't know what's going to happen on this shift, but boy, if something happens that is unexpected, I'll have a useful book of numbers and I'll know who to call. So sometimes just having that in your own handwriting that you use is just a really useful thing to keep in your pocket or your bag. And then when you're in there, I think one of the things that I did on that day was identified who do I have around me. And despite the fact they may not be there on your ward with you, there are always people in a hospital or in any sort of community setting or wherever you are leading who are there. You just have to find them. So you have other wards, you have other specialties, you have other advanced nurses around the place, you have people in the rooms in the buildings around you, and you just clock them, talk to them, say, do you know what, I'm just about to do my first shift in charge, or I've just started my first shift in charge. Tell the porter, tell the pharmacist on your ward, tell your doctors, because people will understand about you, what you're doing, and how they then can support you on those difficult hours when you get through your shift. And then I think this thing that might help you in advance of coming is to spend some time learning about leadership. And that for me now is something, and I'll talk a little bit about how the RCN's Leadership Academy might be able to help you a little bit more with that. But learn about the skills of leadership. And leadership, I think, is something that many people have said, you know, oh, some leaders are born and you know, you don't learn to be a leader, you're naturally a leader. I don't agree with that. I think there are real skills in leadership that you can learn and you can think about before you take on those roles. And key ones for me are about listening to what's going on, looking around you, reading the room, and trying to get a grasp of what it is that are your priorities. And if you just keep those things in your mind and look at how you might use your skills as a leader, and you all have them because you've been leading already, how you might start using those when you walk on a ward and have to take the keys, you have to be in charge. And then my final top tip that might help you in advance is to look at your role models. Now, I think nursing is full of the most amazing role models. And as a student nurse and a nurse in my early career, when I'd qualified, I had some incredible role models. And they were the people I looked up to. They were the nurses that I wanted to be. And I would just watch them. What are they doing? How do they work? How do they speak to people? How do they get things done? Follow them. Go and ask them. Most people are really pleased when you go and say, look, I think you're a great role model. Could you just talk to me about how you do your job? How do you run this ward? Because it's really difficult. Shadow them and see if you can spend some time just following them and asking them and living their, you know, life in their shoes a little bit so that you can start learning how those people operate in work. And sometimes that can really help you. And then you also get to engage with them and they'll keep an eye out for you. So role models are a really important part of learning to be leaders. Let's have the next slide. So this is actually something that you might want to just take a note of this. I don't know if you can see it very well on the screen there. A couple of years ago, I worked with a team at Sigma. Sigma is a nursing organization in the States. And we were working on a project because we felt that nurses didn't have enough of a competency framework to follow. So when somebody would say to you, I don't know how to be a leader, or how can I learn to be a leader, or what are the skills I need, or what are the competencies that can make me a better leader? We started developing a global competency framework for leadership. And if you click on here onto this link, it'll take you to a website which takes you through the competencies that we built together with a whole load of global nursing leaders that take you through a career path for leadership, starting off as a novice nurse and taking you right through to how you grow your skills to be what we called a luminary leader. So it's just another tool that you might find helpful in your toolbox. And when you've got some time, just have a look at that website, and it I hope will be useful for you to read and maybe give you some ideas there about what things you might need to focus on if you're looking at on your first beginning in your first days as being a leader on a ward or in your workplace. Next slide, please. So on the big day itself, I've said already, remember why you're here, and you do that job for a reason. And it's really important that you do remember that, because I think that will really help you carry yourself through the days that are difficult. Make a list. I mentioned that before. I love lists. And my first day in charge, I took the ward diary and I just walked around with this diary, ticking off things, adding things, so that absolutely could be sure that by the end of the shift, I'd managed to make sure that nothing got forgotten. And having a list and a checklist is it's a real good strength for patient safety, actually, when you go, or you've been told something, 6 people are coming to tell you things or ask you questions. Write it all down, have it on a list, tick it off. And then if it's not ticked off for any reason, you've got a really, really good way of handing stuff over to the next shift and the incoming person. But you also have an audit trail of the work that you have done as well. So useful, keep a list. Ask for help. There will always be people, as I said before, who will help you. Go and talk to the people in the ward next door and just say, look, this is my first shift. I'm in charge. I may come and ask you for help. they'll be there for you, I'm sure, as you would be for them when you're much more experienced and they come and ask you. Find your allies. There will always be people around you who will help you. Just dig them out. You'll find them in all sorts of strange places. And don't be surprised if they come from places that you might not expect. So you may find there's a medical student who might be able to help you. You may find there's a nursing support worker who's actually really, really experienced, who sits quietly getting on with their job, but actually may really be able to help. So you will find your strength from your allies, but make sure that you ask and seek them out. And then I've written here, don't beat yourself up about things you can't change. There's a lot of things that happen in hospitals that are really difficult for us to deal with. You can't, in your first shift in charge, control the queues in the A&E. You can't stop people being cared for in a corridor. You can't do that on your first day. So don't beat yourself up about those things. Speak to people about them, report your problems to people, but don't blame yourself for them. All you can do is your best. And that's really important. And I just put that little icon there, phone a friend, from your little black book that I hope you might like to consider keeping. So go to the next one. Next slide, please. Okay, so looking ahead, what might help you after your first day? And things, and this brings me on to what we're going to be doing in the Leadership Academy. So leadership development programs exist all over the country. There's a lot of options for leadership development programs just now. There's short ones you can do for free online. There's much more complex ones. There's ones that are expensive. There's ones that your organizations will support you to do. But really try and find something that will help you to grow your leadership skills, because it will give you not only the skills, it will also give you a network of people who are in the same position as you. And when you learn with people, I think it really helps you to start building the skills together. And sharing your experiences is really helpful, and learning from other people's real life experiences. And I know we're going to hear from those from other colleagues in a minute. Reflective practice is really important. Keep your journals, keep your reflective statements, because it's really helpful sometimes to be able to look back on those and think, goodness me, that was a really hard day and look how far I've come. So keep reflecting on the work that you do. What are the good things? What are the challenges? How did you overcome them? And you'll be surprised at how good you become very quickly. Mentorship for me is a really important thing, and anybody that's I've spoken to that's listening who knows me will know I talk a lot about mentorship and finding somebody to ask. And I think as nurses starting off in a career, I think that's really important. And in our new Leadership Academy, we are really committing to developing mentors so that people who would like to be mentored can have access to a really good mentorship program. So if you get the opportunity to have a mentor, do find one. And as you grow in your career, if you're ever asked to be a mentor, think about that too, because that's a really beneficial thing. And I think quite often as a mentor, you learn as much, if not more, than perhaps the mentee. So it's a really great relationship for both people. So really try and find a mentor if you can. And then within our Leadership Academy, and what we're beginning to start building, is a whole load of different options to have problem-solving groups, peer support hubs, masterclasses. And you may find that your organizations have these already. So do check in and ask if there are groups that you could join, or set them up yourself. There's nothing stopping you putting a group together to say, look, we're a group of nurses all starting off leading. Let's support ourselves by creating a little hub together that we can share our experiences and talk about how we're getting through the difficult times. So going to the next slide. So the Institute, and how can we help you? So for those of you that don't know, the Royal College of Nursing has established a Royal College of Nursing Institute for Nursing Excellence. And within that, it has 5 academies, and you can see the 5 there. We have one for nursing practice, one for international nursing, mine in the middle, nursing leadership, one for workforce, and one for activism. And wrapping around all those 5 academies are our education team, fantastic education team, and our research program, because we recognize that every one of those academies needs both research and education to strengthen them. So we are here for you. We want to hear what you would like to see in these academies and how we can best support the work that you're doing out there on the front line. So let's have the next slide. Okay, this is mine, Leadership Academy. Sorry, next one after that. I think I've mentioned that several times. So what is the Leadership Academy? So we've only just been going since May. I joined the RCN in May. So we're still in our early phase, really, but we're trying to build a whole connected suite of leadership development programs so that we start by having opportunities for people in their pre-nurse training. So working with our cadet program to supporting entry points to develop leadership from every part of your career so that you could join the academy when you're 16, and you might want to stay until you retire, because there'll be things that interest you around leadership at every point. We're going to start soon being able to build some forums for leadership across the world. So being able to connect with countries and opportunities through other nursing associations around the world and share our experiences with different nursing organizations in different countries, which isn't something that we've particularly ever managed to do successfully before. We can learn a lot from our partners and how they manage different situations and how they lead. So that's something that might be of interest to you to join in the next few months when we get these underway. We're going to have a suite of masterclass programs, and these will be opportunities for you to join a session or a series of sessions focusing on particular areas of leadership that might be of interest or might be helpful. And it would be really great to hear from all of you about what you think those topics should be. We have some ideas and we've spoken to a lot of people around what is useful, but it's always really, really important to hear your views about what you would like to learn around. Some nurses have come to us and said they'd like to have a whole series of master classes around investigations and statement writing and giving evidence in court. So we're going to put together a program for that. But if there's particular topics that you think would be really helpful and interesting, please just let me know so that we can start building some support for you around that. Mentorship I've already talked about, and we're going to develop a program to build skills in being a mentor. So people will be able to learn how to be a good mentor, and then we'll be able to offer mentorship to everybody doing our programs. And then we're having a network. We will have a network full of opportunities for discussions so that you can have a message board where you can say, look, I'm interested in leading in infection control, for example. Has anybody got experience of this? And we can connect you with other people who may be in similar situations to you so that you can share your skills, you can learn from other people, and you can get support through a really big network across the world. And then obviously we're going to start looking at our research programs for leadership. And one of the key things around that is trying to understand what is the economic value of teaching and supporting nurses to be better leaders. And we kind of know that the better we are, the greater value that has to the healthcare system. But we've never really proved that through a robust research program. So we're going to look at that in the next year and to make sure that we can really be very clear in presenting evidence to government, to policymakers, to say, if you invest in nurses, in leadership development in nurses, our patients get better, the health systems are better, and our systems are stronger. So that's the core work of our institute there. I think that's probably, I'm going to run out of time in a second. If you just want to click to the next slide, I shall speed up. Next slide then. So yes, and just coming to the end now, one of the things that we will try and address through this Leadership Academy is to stop, look at the challenges that are stopping us being great leaders. There's a lot of cultural perceptions of nursing that we need to address. A lot of globally, women don't step into leadership positions enough. We know that nursing is a very female profession, so we want to make sure that we're giving nurses and female nurses, women in nursing, the greatest opportunities to develop their skills. We know that across the country, leadership development opportunities are not consistent. So some organizations offer more than others, and we want to make sure that we can enable everybody who wants to learn around leadership to be able to have those opportunities. We want to be able to talk about the complex work nurses do and why we need nurses to be better leaders. It is a really complicated job when you start looking at career paths, opportunities, different specialties, enormous opportunities, but that makes it a complex system, and leading that is difficult. So we want to make sure that we're equipping all of you who will be our future workforce as you become more experienced, that you have the leadership skills you need to take this profession through into the next generation. And then we also know that we have a lack of engagement in leadership outside our profession. So we need to be talking to people who are not nurses, who are lawyers, who are our finance managers, who are our governance experts, who are medical teams, and all the people who work alongside us. So they really understand the true value of nursing leadership. And that's the work of the Academy as well. And the next slide, please. So I just want to remind you why your leadership really matters. And that's because you are important. Your role for patients is always why leadership matters. Nurses need to be good leaders because our patients need you to be good leaders. We make up the majority of the healthcare workforce, and that needs leadership. So therefore, we need to step into these leadership roles. And that's why we need to develop and strengthen our skills to be better. We deliver care in systems, huge systems now, global systems, international systems, national systems, local systems, system driven, and we should be part of the design of them. We live and work in them and we understand how they work. So we really need to be part of those designs. And we're not always, as a profession, we're not, and we need to be. And finally, why do we need to be leaders? Why does our leadership matter? Is because without good leadership, patients come to harm. And that's something as nurses that we have to try and prevent. So I think that's probably my last slide, actually. Is that right? Have I got any more? Yeah, there we go. So the motto for our academy, be big, be bold, and lead the way. And I really hope that you will, I know you will all be great, but be brave. Sometimes it's frightening, but you'll be okay. We're here to help you. I'm going to stop talking now. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Emily. That was amazing. It was really, really brilliant. Thank you so much. There's so much to digest there and so much to reflect on, but in the interest of time, I'm going to switch straight to Neil. So we'll go for the next slide and hopefully Neil will come on screen any second now.
I should be there now.
I can hear you. Is your camera on too?
It is, yes. Can you see me?
Super duper. Yes, we can see you. Welcome. Thank you so much for stepping in. I'm going to let you go straight ahead. Thanks again, Neil.
No worries. So thanks so much for thinking of me and allowing me to come and talk to you this evening. I've been a nurse for some time and I still remember it fresh. But if we can go to the next slide, please. It probably works better if I talk through the next bit. So this is the wall of me. And I use this in some of my slides because it kind of sets up myself. So I'm Major Neil Gilbert. I'm the Senior Nursing Officer for Redford Barracks in Edinburgh. I'm a general practice nurse specialist and have been doing so for a number of years. And I've been a Senior Nursing Officer since 2017. But I've not always been that. As you can see from here, I've had a bit of a varied career. Before I became a nurse, I was an infantry soldier. I had no idea that I'd end up falling into nursing, and actually those experiences have led me through. But my first real experience of leading a team was actually as a young corporal at Frimley Park Hospital, where I worked on the MAU, and I remember it. It was a night, and it was one of the most intimidating things that I'd done, and I'd been on a number of operational tours at that time. But what I'm going to do over the next 10 minutes is just kind of talk through kind of how my experiences kind of relate to where you are at the moment, and how you kind of can take some of this as you transition to kind of being in charge, although you've already been in charge because you look after patients. Next slide, please. So I always start with a quote. A long time ago, I was asked to put a quote under a photo that we were taking for one of my platoons, and this is what I settled on. It's an Albert Einstein quote. It's a little bit old these days, but I feel that this applies quite well to nursing, and it applies quite well to leadership. You're not really being a leader to be a success. You're doing it to be of value, and being of value is more useful, because being a success is no help to your patient, but being of value to their care is really, really key. So next slide, please. That's not me in the picture, but actually when I joined the nursing corps many years ago, that's what the nurses were still wearing, and we've transitioned from them. So I've been doing this a little bit of time. But we're going to talk a little bit. So imposter syndrome, as you can see here, you've probably heard about it. It's described kind of as a feeling of inadequacy that persists despite evidence of success. It's a kind of sensation of chronic self-doubt that makes you feel undermined. It's isolating, and it makes you feel like you're fraudulent. And over a prolonged period, this can really contribute to burnout, as we've seen quite a lot. And it's something that you will experience at some point when you transition into something new. I still feel this because we move every 2 years. So it's one of those where it kind of matches to what you do, because you'll have that feeling going, am I the person to be doing this? And you are. You are exactly the right people to be doing this. So if you feel this, know that it can be quite normal. And what we're going to talk about now will help you get through that kind of feeling. Remember that you're pretty new to this, and being self-aware of your limitations and your actual skills will help you to progress forward. You need to be self-aware, and you only know what you know, and anything else you can learn. And you've learned so much so far, but nursing is perpetual learning, and every day you'll learn more. And I do every day, and I've been doing it for a number of years. I still remember starting my first shift on MAU when I did my first shift in charge, like it was yesterday. It was a night shift. We had monitored patients, and it was daunting. And I still think back of it and think of how daunting it was. As a member of a team, you kind of know what needs to be done because you'll have been in that team already. But the change in your mindset is that you're thinking that everyone is looking to you for direction. And I think you need to be aware that you're a team in this, and team will come through as the golden thread that goes through this. You may find that when you first start leading teams, you find that things are overdue, and this can kind of weigh on you. So if you finish a shift and you're like, oh, I've not done that, I should have done that, and it weighs on you, then it's something you learn from. But what you need to do is make sure that you don't create kind of a false economy. These are the situations where you need to just develop your time management, because you've only got a certain amount of time, or bandwidth, if we're being quite modern in the way of looking at it. You can only do so much for a certain amount of time. Now, if you become a pleaser and you're not great at managing that, what you want to try not to do is to increase your workload and go outside of your own capacity, because that can lead to quite a lot of burnout. And quite a lot of recent studies by the BMA have actually shown that this has been a major factor in burnouts in GP clinics over the last few years. So the main thing with this is really you should be comfortable asking for help. So if you find that you need help, ask for it. Now, I've been a senior nursing officer now for a long time, and I have been running on behalf of the Colonel, so the senior nursing officer in the Army, so runs the practice on behalf of the Colonel. So I'm a manager as well as a clinician, but I'm never too proud to ask my band 5s and band 6s for help, ever. And I will always go into them, and they have the experience. My clinicians are excellent, and I will go into them, and I will often go, how do I do this? And that's one thing. Never be too proud to ask for help, because we are always developing. Next slide, please. So the team, this is actually my team. I'm the one in white, so I do look like a nurse. Your team is actually the most important and valuable resource you have, and you need to develop your relationship, because this is essential, as leadership is actually a team effort. You may have heard that it's lonely at the top, but that's only really if you're not working as a team. The team will make sure that it doesn't feel lonely, because it's something that if you've got a good team, you will feel supported. Although sometimes you'll think that a team leader, if you've not done a lot of leading, if you think that team leading is giving direction at the beginning of a shift, then you need to rethink it slightly, because actually it comes at the beginning of shift, but actually you need to keep communicating throughout. Communication is a key. And if you're catching up with people, having huddles, or just going around and asking people how they are, it will really help how your team works with you and for you. Every day I will walk around the practice where I work. I will go see my administrators. I will go see the nurses. I will go see the doctors. I will go around and see the physio, and I'll just take time just to see how things are. And that builds real communication. That builds bridges that you can't get just by giving direction from there. Although sometimes direction is required, as we'll talk about as we go. And with that, building that communication means that you're able to then do feedback. Now, feedback is two ways, and generally should always be constructive. But it should always really be constructive. There's nothing worse than receiving feedback and not knowing what to do with it. Feedback has a purpose, and it helps you to develop. We don't really want a blame culture where you drop comments or give suggestions for improvement without actually saying why or what it's for. Feedback is fantastic. It's a great tool to improve practice across the board. And feedback is a way that we grow as people. We're not perfect, and we never will be. But what we can do is receive feedback and give feedback and use it to develop ourselves. And it should really be constructive. Sometimes you'll feel that if you're leading something, you have to jump in and help someone with something, but you may find that your perception is different to someone. Someone may be doing really well, but you're perceiving that they're not. Be really mindful when you're dealing with your team that they have different ways of working. It may seem to you they need some help, but it might just be your perception. Ask people, speak to them, and then show availability. If they need help, they'll take that from there. But also watch to see if people are trying to be too proud, and do offer that support as you go. At the same time, if you're struggling, ask for help. Sometimes we're really good at hiding when we need help, because sometimes there is still that perception of being weak or failing. It's okay to ask, and it highlights that you are self-aware. As we've already discussed, your team is your greatest asset, so use their experience. If you have a team that has more experience within them, so someone with wound care or something like that, so you're not too good on that and you've come in, then use their knowledge and help them support your role. It develops you and it empowers the people around you. Empowerment is really, really good within practice, because it means that people feel that they can do things within their own scope of practice. Within a military nursing construct, we often deploy a multidisciplinary team, so I will deploy with multiple other people, and I defer to the clinician whose expertise is there, and often that is junior personnel who are more current than myself. And if someone is good, or if your team's good, recognize and celebrate that success. Building a team is good and it's essential. A confident team that celebrates success works really well together. If a team knows they're recognized, they will work for you and they will deliver their best results. My team, for example, have been working really hard. And actually today I've signed off on an end of year award. So all of my staff, from the lowest administrator, I'm not saying lowest as in thing, but from a structure, but from our administrators all out to the doctors, all receiving £80 gift vouchers, which I've signed off on today. And that's a little something that's going quite a long way. And I've been listening to my team, and actually the team is very happy in the way that things are working. So recognizing good practice, or recognizing just that people are doing the right thing on difficult days, is really, really good. Next slide, please. So we kind of said the team's important. The other thing that's important is to actually be visible. So by being visible, I put a picture there because I'm in the army and I always find things funny. You've got to be visible in a clinical setting. There's plenty of times where in the past you'll have people that manage but they vanish and they don't do things. And that's just from experience. I'm not saying everybody does that, but being present in a clinical setting is essential for a number of reasons. As I kind of previously said, I take time in my day to walk around and see the staff, and it helps me develop that professional rapport with the team. But as a senior manager, I still find time to interact with the main person in healthcare, and that is the patient. And I've been on wards where sometimes people will spend time sat behind a desk doing notes, but actually we should be engaging with the patient. So being in there and doing the job, because that builds quite a good rapport with your team. As a nurse practitioner in general practice, I still conduct standard general practice clinics alongside my nursing colleagues, and we have a great time doing it. It keeps me current, it keeps me competent, it shows that I can do what they do and I can help them when they go. So doing that job is essential. It builds that mutual understanding, and a mutual respect is really good in maintaining a team. And it proves kind of to myself and to everyone else, so it does help with that imposter syndrome, that I'm a nurse first. And just remember that you are a nurse first and you're good. If someone's put you into a position of management, you've got to be pretty good in the first place. This goes a long way to making you an inspirational leader rather than a nurse manager. And that's a real thing. Be an inspirational leader. Don't just be a nurse manager. This can be achieved quite simply by going around and saying to staff, what do you need me to do? How can I help with that? And that sort of thing. You're still in charge, but you're helping and you're being inspirational because they will want to be just like you. It's these interactions that will build your confidence, and it means that people will be able to approach you. So being approachable is really key, because if someone can't come to you, then they can't ask for help or advice. And then you won't have those things that are left unsaid or undone. And communication is kind of that core tenet of leadership. And it's something that you can develop and people will be able to then talk to you more. But do remember, as approachable as you are, and it's not all about that, The responsibility that you hold being in charge means that you are accountable for your team. So clear boundaries and allocating tasks are still required, no matter how approachable you may be. And you should use the skill set that you've got. Delegation is a really, really hard thing to do if you've not done it before. But be fair and make sure that you're using the skills, and you'll find that it gets easier. A professional team will follow your lead, and they will work with you to achieve team goals. So in the past, I've been a trauma lead when I was in Afghanistan, and that's a really tough time when you've got to kind of be a little bit direct. But as a team, I would identify the skill sets. Right, you're on airway. You are going to do my assessment. You're going to be doing the surgical interventions. And actually, we'd work together, and that pushed up our survival rate and our chance for everyone to do well and do the best for our patients. And that meant that teamwork worked. And that was from a little bit of directness. So sometimes there is a time that you should be there. You could argue that not everyone is prepared to be in charge. Ask for feedback from people if you find that you're struggling, and use this to develop yourself. Be objective with anything you get, because not every opinion you're taking, you need to take that in and assess what's being told to you, and be fair on yourself. Don't beat yourself up about things, because you'll find that you just go round in circles. Be fair and be objective. You're at the beginning of a fulfilling journey, and you will see that the best care from your patients comes from you and your team working together, and leadership. Patients, of course, are the center of everything you do. The goal for your patients is to receive the right care at the right time by the right person. An engaged and happy team will surely help you to achieve this. Thank you very much for your time. I have put a question slide on the next one, but if you can save that to the end. But thank you very much for listening to me this evening.
We will save that to the end. Thank you so much, Neil. So many nuggets there. I feel like I'm gonna watch this the recording of this session over and over again, because both of you have provided us with so much food for thought, which is amazing. We are going to now move on, because like every good webinar ever, we're running over time considerably, but we're going to move on to our two newly registered nurses, Gabby and Lucy, who are going to talk to us about their lived experience. And as I've already said, that's really, really valuable. If you have anything to chat about, please do feel free to use the chat, and also please do pop your questions in the Q&A box. If we don't get around to all of them tonight, we will certainly get back to the audience with the answers. Gabby, are you ready? I can see you.
You can see me and you can hear me.
Brilliant. I can see and hear you. Go ahead. Thank you.
So yeah, thanks for kind of having me on the webinar. My name's Gabby, and I am a registered mental health nurse, and I registered in August of 2023, so around 18 months ago. I work in the forensic service in Southeast England. So I work in a male unit with males who've encountered criminal justice issues. I actually took the job there because I had a placement there, and I was very set on wanting to have a placement, wanting to hold my first job in somewhere I had a placement, so I knew the environment. I kind of knew the running of the ward and the daily routine. So I first took charge of a shift autonomously about 3 weeks into having my PIN, and to say I was terrified was an absolute understatement. It was really nice to know that I was trusted by my colleagues, but didn't feel kind of prepared at all in the slightest. University, prepares you for all the kind of the theory into practice skills, but it did not prepare me on kind of how to run a shift or how to be that person in charge. The encounters I see on shifts on a day-to-day basis, I kind of look back and think, oh my gosh, it's becoming more natural, but the first time was terrifying. Initially, I'm a neurodivergent nurse as well myself, so kind of when things, I think Emily was saying earlier, kind of you'd planned your whole shift out in your head, and I still like to do that now, and I know that's not the reality of working on the ward, and I know that things change, and someone who is neurodivergent, struggling with change but being adaptable within that. Kind of reflecting on those experiences and looking back on it definitely toughened me up, helped me build resilience as a nurse, but as an individual, kind of on a personal level as well. It helped build my confidence and kind of reminded me why I chose to do nursing in the first place. So that's kind of a short snippet into kind of my first experience, but I wanted to focus more on the top tips and kind of looking back what I would tell myself now, if I was kind of running my first shift or leading my first shift in charge. I kind of echo what Neil and Emily have said, and kind of take opportunities and learn from your colleagues. Some of the things I've learned from the RNAs, the HCAs, who have a wealth of experience, and nurses who some have been qualified for years and years and years, and turning to my colleagues for those support and kind of asking them, you know, what do you think about this? I remind myself why on a daily basis, especially on those shifts that are really, really tough. Never underestimate the power of peer support, kind of from the New Registered Nurse Network and other organisations that I'm involved in as an early career newly registered nurse. The power of the peer support that I have from those people has, you know, I've gone to them for advice, they come to me, and it's a really positive mechanism and something that I heavily rely on. Again, don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't admit that you don't know something. You know, you're still learning. You might have a pin, but the beauty of nursing is you never stop learning. And that's why I personally love being a nurse. Celebrate those small wins. You know, if the shift's gone well, or you've helped de-escalate a patient, or you've thought, you know, celebrate your staff, celebrate your colleagues, celebrate yourself. And I guess one of my final tips would be surround yourself with, I like to call your cheerleaders. So those positive role models who celebrate your successes, remind you of your worth, but tell you to toughen up when, you know, you don't think you're good enough, or something's really, really hard and didn't go how you wanted it to. I know for one, I wouldn't be where I am with the likes of a few people, Kendall being one of them. I many a time go to her for conversations and say, I'm not really sure what to do about this, and kind of using those positive role models and those people that champion you. Again, kind of echoing what Emily says, spending time with those leaders and those heads of service, and looking at your matrons and thinking, what would you do in this situation? There's many a time where, you know, I know how to run a shift. I've been doing it a while, but if I'm not quite sure on something, I'll go down and I'll say, you know, what do you think about this? Do you think that's the right thing? What would you do in my situation? This is my plan, and this is what I intend to do, but am I doing the right thing? And, you know, arguably that could be questioning myself, and maybe I am to an extent, but kind of still seeking that reassurance and knowing you're doing the right thing, I think is really important. And I think, just to finish slightly, remind yourself you're enough. I think, you know, as nurses, we become so, you know, we want to help people, we want to fix people, but sometimes we lose sight of ourselves, and remind yourself you're always enough, and never lose sight of that. I think, yeah, sorry, I tried to keep it short and sweet because I know we're running really over time.
That is just perfect. Thank you, Gabby. And I think Lucy is just getting ready to come straight on. Go ahead, Lucy.
Hiya, everyone. You all see and hear me?
Yes, we've got you. Thanks.
Good. So my name's Lucy. I am an early career nurse. I'm an adult registered nurse. I work in elderly acute care, which can be some of the maddest things you ever see when you've got someone with dementia and delirium running around thinking they're in prison, but it's also a lot of good fun. Just like Gabby, I started somewhere where I'd had a placement before, and that was mainly because I knew it was going to be a supportive environment for me when I was new and didn't really know what was going on. And similarly to Emily, my first in charge shift was unexpected. Someone was off sick, and suddenly I was the least junior person, and I was like, oh no, I'm the least junior person, that means I have to be in charge, which is the way we work it on my ward. And I definitely felt like I'd been thrown in at the deep end. I didn't really know what I was meant to be doing. I was worried everything would go wrong and I would be blamed, which, looking back, was probably a silly thing to think, because, you know, things can go wrong and it's kind of the nature of the job. And I had all my colleagues around me who were supporting me. They all knew it was my first shift in charge, so they were helpful. I could go to them with questions. My manager was there, so ultimately it wouldn't all be down to me. But yeah, I think the fear was definitely a lot more than was warranted. We have a list of in-charge jobs, so I worked my way through that. Because it was someone being off sick, it also meant that I had patients, which can be a struggle, because you're basically trying to juggle 2 jobs at once. But I think that actually it turned out quite well. I mean, no one was complaining to me at the very least, and I managed to get time to go and check that everyone was doing okay. I managed to get all the jobs on the list done. There were no major incidents. And I think you have to look at the good things instead of the bad, and that's how I've tried to reflect on it. Since then, I've had easier in charge shifts and harder in charge shifts. It really just depends on the day. And some of the things that can come up are difficult, and you can't necessarily prepare yourself for them. If you have, a patient making a complaint, for example, or a situation that's totally unexpected, you kind of have to ride with it and just learn it as you're doing it. I actually quite like that element now, because it gives me a bit of a challenge and gets me to start thinking, and I've always got those people around me who can support me and help me and give me answers if I've not got them. I think it's very important to know that you have got those people around you. Nobody knows all the answers, and people are going to expect you to ask them questions. But even if you've not got your ward manager there, there's probably a matron, there's your site team, there's the people around you who maybe are more junior than you, but that doesn't mean that they don't have answers and can't, help you out. I think for me, it's become a lot easier because I realise that now. And I think I'd like people to know that, it's not this big scary thing as much as you might think it is. And that it is something you can do. Like, you're already using a lot of the skills when you're in charge of patients, when you're having conversations with your colleagues, when you're doing things like joining in with RCN events. Those skills are there, and you just have to believe in yourself, I suppose. It's okay to be scared. It's okay to worry, but please, don't blame yourself for anything, because nursing is hard enough without us giving ourselves a hard time. I think that's everything I wanted to say.
That's perfect. Thank
you.
you, Lucy. Lucy and Gabby, that's brilliant. Thank you for those honest reflections, and again, hearing about the lived experiences is so important. We've heard about so much tonight, from having little black books, looking at my notes here, being humble, asking for help, having role models, having your cheerleaders, which is something I love, sanity checking things, recognizing your value and adding value, and knowing we are enough, which was a really beautiful little tagline from Gabby, and lots more. We have a few questions that we will get to after I do this signposting slide. So if you found this useful, we'd love to signpost you to these 3 things. The Newly Registered Nurses Handbook has just been reviewed and republished, and it's a really useful tool. That QR code will take you there. You might also want to check out RCN Learn, which has lots of clinical tools and information, as well as a really great revalidation portfolio that is free to use for those of you with a RCN membership. And also looking at your future development, it would be really good to check out the forum and networks list, because depending on your specialism, you may want to join a forum to get the most up-to-date information and find out what's going on in various different parts of clinical practice. For example, the Emergency Care Forum or the Defence Nursing Forum. I'm listing those because they're the ones that I support. But there are many more. So we do have 2 questions. The first question we will go to, with just 6 minutes to go, is leading a shift something, the chat's just moved, that we should volunteer for rather than wait to be asked? And if so, at what point should we start thinking about it? Is it worth building into our preceptorship? Does anybody have any thoughts on that? Emily, I can see you've come off mute. Thank you so much. Go ahead.
Well, I can say definitely go for it, because the more you get used to it, the more it stops being frightening. And I think when you can be in charge or lead your shift, perhaps supported by your preceptor in that period, with somebody standing there beside you as you do it, it's a lot easier than turning up and being told that you've got to do it because someone's off sick. So creating an environment where you feel a bit safer is really helpful. And if you can do that, shadowing somebody or working together with them in a sort of bit more of a controlled way, I'd say that's always a really, really nicer way of doing that. And then the next time won't be so bad. I think the worst case, and I think, Lucy, you also said, you planned it in advance and you turned up and all of a sudden there you were. And I think that's not ideal. It happens a lot. So if you can avoid being in that situation, it's a lot easier. So yes, go for it.
Super answer. Thank you so much, Emily. And Lucy, I can see you've got something to add.
Yeah, so I think for me, in our team, it's whoever's the least junior. So you can't really request to be in charge. You're just put in charge if you're that person. But I think there's nothing wrong with going to a manager and saying, oh, I was wondering if I could have an in-charge shift when my preceptor's here, or when there's someone really experienced about who can support me, just to try and get that shock factor away that I had when I had my first in-charge shift. Also, if you're still a student, try and see if you can shadow an in-charge shift. I never really got the chance to do that, and I think that added to my anxiety around it the first time. And it is something that teams will let you do if they can, if they have the availability of that.
Great, thank you. We've got one more question that we'll do really quickly, so brief answers only, please. So we've got someone asking, working in A&E, they deal with lots of patients with lots going on at all times, and they find it difficult to manage all that information and keep on top of it. Have you got any tips on that? Emily, maybe I'll come to you first.
Yes, I just wrote a little answer to Kingsley there in the chat, but write things down, keep a list, love a checklist. Checklists in ED are your lifeblood, actually. They're a real resource. Use your checklist, they really help you. And in ED, you normally have a whiteboard or an electronic board with all your patients on. Just keep checking in with the nurses that are looking after the individual patients to ask them, where are they with this? Are they on top of that? And then you've got your own kind of control of what's going on a little bit. But balancing all those things in your head is quite hard, so write it down.
Amazing, thank you so much. Lucy or Gabby, anything to add there? I think that's probably the best tip, isn't it?
Please don't put me in ED because I will panic. That's about all I've got to add.
Know your strengths. Know your strengths and where you can add most value. Gabby, did you say something? Sorry.
I was just agreeing with what Emily was saying. I don't work in ED, but I work in quite a high kind of acuity environment, and it's very fast-paced and driven. So I liken it to ED, but for mental health, I suppose. But yeah, write things down and, continue to ask for help if you need it.
Great. Yeah, that's a good point too. Yeah, really good point. Thank you, Gabby. So with only 1 minute to go, I will bring us to a close. I just wanted to thank you all for joining. We've had a really high number of people come and join the call, so thank you so much. Thanks from the Newly Registered Nurses Network, and you've met quite a few of them tonight, which is amazing. Thank you to all of our speakers. You have been brilliant, and I can't wait to watch this back because there were lots of real gems there. And thanks to everyone working behind the scenes, Jitan and Caitlin, for all of your support with the Newly Registered Nurses Network that is ongoing, Gary and Ollie for the AV support, and Rihanna for bringing all of the slides together tonight and sorting us all out and keeping us all on track. So thanks again, everyone. This is recorded. It will be uploaded as soon as we can get it onto the website. And I wish you the best of luck with leading your first shift in charge. You've got this.